Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Meesha.
Welcome back to another episode of the North Atlanta Real Estate Podcast with your insightful and analytical hosts, Meesha Rawal
And Jeff Aughey.
And today we're doing a quick North Fulton, South Forsyth market pulse, what we're seeing year to date, the activity, days on the market, how many homes are for sale, and what's happening with mortgage rates.
Yeah, in fact, why don't we start off with mortgage rates? It's a simple and good place to start. So, the good news is things are coming down. If we look back in the beginning of last year, I think, Meesha, we had the fixed rates at just over 7%, 7.07. At the beginning of January this year, it had dropped to 6.2. So, not a full percentage point, but almost. But then as of today, when we're doing this in the middle part of February, we're now at 6.04. So we're actually over a full percent down from last year.
Yeah, and that might not sound dramatic, but it changes monthly payments. I had a client who bought a house for $500,000 with an FHA, and his monthly payments were close to $4,200. Now, if you go ahead and buy a house for about the same price, your monthly payments will hover around $3,700 to $3,800, again, depending on your credit history and credit score.
Yeah, and the amount of the mortgage and such. But yeah, so the point is head in the right direction. And I think you were talking to some renters recently, and their rental payments are now pretty much what the payment would be if they bought the house
yes,
today, right?
Exactly. And this is for my open house at 2095 Melrose Trace. I had a couple of families come in, and one's monthly payment was $3,500, and they lived about 5 minutes away from that house. And another one was about $2,800. So if you buy a house for about $600, $650, and you put 20% down, your monthly payments will hover between $2,800 to $3,500. Again, depending on credit score.
So that's one of the good things, and one of the things where it gets to an inflection point where all of a sudden people get off the fence and decide to purchase rather than rent is rents have stayed pretty much the same, but the affordability of the homes has dropped a little because of this drop in interest rates. So now people look at it and say, well, I can own a home instead of renting it, as long as you can come up with a down payment.
And here's the practical point. Even when rates improve, the market doesn't instantly turn into 2021 again. It tends to show up more showings, better open house traffic, and more serious buyers taking second looks at homes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of people, and we've heard for a few years now, because people have always been predicting, a lot of people are saying, oh, rates are going to come down, and then people are going to flood into the market and drive prices up. That probably could happen if we had these dramatic falls in interest rates, but we're probably not going to get that. From here, I don't think anybody's predicting that we're going to have rates that get lower than 5.5%, and maybe even not that low. And
buyers who are waiting for interest rates to drop from 7 to 6, and they see an interest rate drop to 5.5%, will be like, well, let's just wait for 5%. Let's just wait for 4.5%.
Some people do.
5%, yeah. A lot of buyers just like to wait and watch the market and try to hit the bottom. Timing the market is not always the best strategy.
It reminds me of when we were, I think we were in Woodhaven knocking doors at an apartment complex. And remember this one person, they were waiting, and it was, what were the homes? They were going up in price, and they kept waiting for it to come down. And how much did those folks went up? It went up to like $1 million where they were first looking at 500 or 600 or something.
Absolutely.
And you just wait forever and it never happened.
Yes. And then that was an interesting door knocking experience that time. We've seen a lot of buyers wait and a lot of buyers bite the bullet, and they've been very happy that they bought it when they did.
I don't think as long as you don't have to sell right away or you lose your job or something unexpected, I don't think I've really known too many clients that have bought houses and wish they hadn't. If you do it for long term, you almost always come out better.
Yeah, the one family that I do remember who regretted buying a house was they bought a house bigger than what their monthly salary could have afforded, and their credit score was not the best, and then they went ahead and bought another brand new car, and then their monthly outlay became a little too much for them, and they had to sell. But if you stay, I feel, within the 3x, you buy a house within 3x your salary, or hopefully 4x your salary, then you'll be in a more comfortable price point, in the sense like if you make $200,000 and you buy a house for $600,000, very comfortable.
Right.
You could stretch it to about $800,000, but I would say $600,000 would be a great price point if you're earning about $200,000.
I think it's a great point you make. Everybody's situation is different, but you do have to be realistic. It doesn't do any good to get yourself in financial pressure. You can always start here, and as your life develops and hopefully your salary increases, you can always move in the future if you feel like you must, right?
Absolutely. And let's talk about days on the market and sales price. You were doing most of the number crunching as you always do. And we found that at Alpharetta, we had an increase of 43% of days on the market for a house to stay. So the number of days on the market was 18. That's up 43%. And there were 48 houses that sold in January.
Yeah, and then, if we compare that to Forsyth County, they had a slightly lower increase, 38% days on the market increase, and went to 43 days. But if you look at the total number of days, Alpharetta is less than half of the time on the market as Forsyth. And I think it's the factors that we talked about before. The farther you go out from the city, as commuting becomes more and more, I guess, a mandatory with a lot of companies, then the desirability of living further out is lessened. And so the closer you are in, the markets generally are a little bit faster, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so the headline for listeners is homes are still selling, but buyers are taking a little longer and they're more selective. So your prep work like pricing, the condition of the house, staging, the photographs matters more than ever now.
Yeah, if you're selling a home, that's also totally true. And then, if on the buying side, you can, in certain situations, you can negotiate a little bit more. Maybe you can get some closing costs paid where you certainly weren't a few years ago. In a home, if it's been sitting, we also looked at some of the, what is the reduction from list price. And we've also seen that, before, where we can remember in, 2021 and 2, it was like 107%. Everything was selling above list. Now we're down where you can get as much as, 3 to 5% reduction from the list price oftentimes.
Yeah. And that was both for Alpharetta and Forsyth County. So no part of North Atlanta has been left untouched by the slowing down of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, from a standpoint of the number of homes for sale, you're a buyer, you're going out into the market compared to this time last year in the beginning of the year, the number of homes in Alpharetta, resales, we should say, we're talking about resales here, resales up 36%, the number of homes to choose from in Alpharetta, and 14% increase in Forsyth County.
Yeah, and to give our listeners a perspective of what that means, we have about 423 houses for sale in Alpharetta as of this recording, out of which 178 were the attached houses and 245 were single family or detached houses. And for Forsyth County, we have 934 houses currently available. 139 are attached, which is surprising because we have 178 attached houses in Alpharetta and a lot less in Forsyth County, and 795 detached or single-family houses available for sale in South Forsyth.
Yeah, and we should say with these numbers, we did include some new home sales.
New construction.
New construction.
Absolutely. And the inventory numbers bounce around daily, but directionally, buyers have more to look at than they did at the tightest points in 2021. I think that's like a reflection point for us, is like the 2020, 2021 market is like we have a lot more inventory now. The prices are not as crazy. People are not overbidding. There are not as many multiple offers as we saw back then. And
because you're kind of the expert in the new homes, you had mentioned to me, I think, recently, they aren't taking the same number of reservations, or you don't have these big wait lists that you had maybe a couple of years ago. Is that right?
Absolutely. I don't think there are any wait lists anymore that we are seeing. They used to be from a few hundred to like almost 1,000 people on a wait list.
Isn't that crazy? I remember some of that.
North Cove, and I believe there was a group of people who actually stood outside North Cove, the subdivision in Cumming, and they had a barbecue going on for like 3 days before the registrations opened because there were not enough houses. And now it's by new construction builders are sending across incentives and price reductions and decrease in the interest rate that you could buy a house with.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just out going around here in downtown Alpharetta, some of the New Providence Group properties, and they were offering about what do they equate to? About 5% reduction in wherever you wanted it, upgrades, closing costs, discount points, et cetera. So yeah, there's incentives now that we certainly didn't have a couple years ago.
Yeah, and for resale, we should always remind families that the market isn't one thing. It's not like one animal. A perfectly priced home in a top school cluster is still a different universe than an overpriced house that needs updates.
No, that's a great great reminder for folks.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And now let's talk about the weather.
Yeah, so we had a couple of cold snaps this year, right? I mean, I've been really loving the fact it's getting warmer now. Since
Yes.
I live in shorts, it hasn't been great for me here in the past
Apparently,
year.
the cold went all the way down to Florida.
Yeah, no, it's been cold, and so that does affect. So what do you feel like that does to some buyers here in our market?
Yeah, I mean, I feel weather usually delays activity more than destroys it. So January we had the ice storm, we had the snowstorm, and the sales fell sharply. And at some point, there were reports pointing towards the weather as a factor. Even for my open house, there was this ice storm that happened, and I had nobody come in for that open house. And I was like, if somebody walks in, that is a serious buyer. Yeah, exactly. So in real life, it looks like the fewer casual showings, people rescheduling, and suddenly you get one sunny weekend and like everybody wants to come out to look at houses at once.
And I think that's going to be one thing that is maybe going to be interesting, because we did a quick year-to-date analysis too in sort of North Fulton and Forsyth, and we find that right now, as of today, about equal number of sales in both markets. So we really haven't had any difference in the number of sales, but maybe this cold weather is pushing some sales into the coming month or so. So we'll keep on top of things, and of course we'll report back to the audience if we see this big spike, or maybe we lost some sales in the beginning of the year because it's colder. Maybe there are a few more buyers out there than were last year. I don't know yet. We'll have to see, right?
Absolutely. And the few buyers who are out there tells me that they are motivated. You know, they may be cautious, but they are real, and that's the reason they are. And for sellers listening, if your home shows well and it's priced right, weather won't stop the right buyer from coming true.
Yeah, that's so true. So tell me about the open house you had. I was surprised because it was quite a rainy week, especially Sunday, I think, is when you held it, right? It was quite a bit of rain in the afternoon.
So I feel I've been very unlucky with the open houses, because it was the snowstorm, then it was the ice storm, and then this past weekend it was raining. So, but I feel the ice storm and the snowstorm definitely deterred people, and there were these wind advisories and weather advisories, and people were asked to stay off the roads. But this past weekend we had about 8 families show up, and 3 were very interested in the house, and they looked around, but they also have other options, because like we talked about, their days on the market has increased. So there's a lot of inventory in the South Forsyth area that buyers are looking at.
Yeah, I think if I was a buyer right now and I had an ability to purchase a home today or wait until April and May, I might have in the back of my mind, I'll have a little bit less competition if I'm looking and buying today. We don't really expect interest rates to drop dramatically. So I don't know. I might, if I was a buyer, I might try to get something under contract in the next 1 to 2 months before the spring really hits.
Absolutely. And out of the 3 buyers who were very interested, 2 were the renters that I previously mentioned, and they were serious because their lease was coming to an end. And a lot of renters, when their lease is coming to an end, the renewal is always a lot more expensive, especially if you're paying about the same as what you could buy. So that's what's bringing a lot of people out. So if your lease is coming to an end, I would definitely encourage you to go out, see what's available in the market right now, and probably get a house under contract.
And I think when we've done a lot of door knocking in the apartment complex, ones with higher rents that often go and purchase homes, I think we've recommended a minimum of 4 to maybe 5 months beforehand to reach out to a realtor or start educating yourself, because you don't want to have to rush out in one weekend and find the house. You need to get yourself pre-approved with your financing, see how much you can afford, start narrowing down the areas. And so it's not a bad idea if someone is in that situation, they could reach out to us now, even if they might not be having their lease expire until summer sometime, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then to add to what you just said, if you're a buyer, definitely get fully underwritten if possible. It's stronger than just a pre-approval letter. Watch the number of days a house has been sitting on the market and ask why. Ask your agent why it's been sitting on the market. And you don't wait for the perfect rate. If you find the right house, you can always refinance later if the rates cooperate.
And I think if you're a seller in this market, I think what you have to remember that today the buyers have a little more to choose from. So you have to have your home in good condition. People, as we know, things are unaffordable, right? It's in the news all over the place. People are having a tough time just coming up with a down payment. They don't have enough money left over to paint, put the carpet in, replace the roof, replace the air conditioner, etc. So if your home has not been updated, you need to consider doing some of those to make it attractive to a bigger pool of buyers. And then you have to keep in mind that if you aren't getting a lot of showings, maybe in that first 2-week period, maybe you don't have it priced properly for the condition it's in, and you need to think about adjusting to the market. But still a good time to sell a home, still a good time to buy a home. It's kind of a balanced market right now.
Absolutely. And for more such information about what the market is doing in the North Fulton, South Forsyth area, stay tuned, stay informed. And this is Meesha Rawal
And Jeff Aughey
saying bye.
Bye-bye.